Township of Monroe Planning Board hearing called to order. It's 6:30 PM. Please stand and salute the flag.
No, I'm there for you.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
1, 2.
In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, it is hereby announced and shall be entered into the minutes of this meeting that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the following: posted on the bulletin board of the office of the Township Clerk, posted on the bulletin boards within the municipal complex, printed in the Home News Tribune on December 30, 2022, posted on the Monroe Township website, and sent to those individuals who have requested personal notice. Lord, please take roll.
Ms. Polidoro? Here. Mr. Rothman?
Here.
Mr. Riggs? Ms. Brodsky?
Yes, here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. Patel?
Here.
Ms. Qureshi? Councilman Van Zura? Mr. Markel?
Here.
Chairman Gaffrey?
Here. Okay, Laura circulated the minutes from our last meeting on January 26, 2023. Is there any comments or any questions regarding the minutes? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, we have two applications this evening, and we will also have a request for an extension, which we'll take first if council is here. Ms. Westlake? I don't see that. So first application, and we may interrupt the first application when Ms. Westlake appears so that we can get her in and out. First application is PB 125222 SZA Properties LLC. Can I have your appearance?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, board professionals. Lawrence Sachs, attorney representing the applicant SZA Properties LLC. This property is located at 839 Route 33 West, known as Block 6, lots 17.01 and 18.01. The property is in your HD zone. We'll be seeking preliminary and final site plan with both variance approval. Just to give a little introduction about the nature of this business. First of all, the principal of SZA Properties LLC is Mr. Adi Natinsky, who presently does operate this same business in Monroe Township. He's been doing that for about 15 years. He's been a resident of Monroe Township for about 30 years. Essentially what he's looking to do is to relocate his business to this site. He's a contract purchaser. He doesn't own the property yet. What we're proposing is a 12,300 square foot office building, which will have offices and a workspace. He's in the commercial printing and graphic arts business. He roughly has 5 employees at the present time, maximum, and his hours of operation are very limited. It's generally from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday. Works an occasional Saturday and Sunday. We're proposing some site improvements. Obviously, our engineer will get into that. Mr. Chairman, I have 3 witnesses this evening. I have Ms. Lorelei Totten, who will be our engineer and planner. I have Mr. Jay Troutman, our traffic engineer, and Mr. Steve Radosty, who's our architect.
Thank you.
So if we can have Ms. Totten sworn in, we'll proceed with her.
Yes. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Would you state your full name and spell your last name, please?
Lorelei E. Totten, T as in Tom, O-T-T-E-N, Crest Engineering Associates, Township, New Jersey.
Okay, Ms. Totten, if you can give the board the benefit of your educational and professional background.
I think she's appeared before us and been accepted, so if anyone has any objections, we can just accept her credentials.
Okay, that's fine, Mr. Chairman, and we're going to have her qualified as an engineer and planner. She's going to do her engineering testimony first, and then she'll wrap up with the planning after the other witnesses.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Totten, I don't know if this microphone's working, so I'll give you this one.
Just hold the button until it turns green. hold the button until it turns green.
You usually have your displays on this side or that. I
I don't.
usually have them over there, and I feel like I'm on the wrong side. Do you have a preference? It's good to be. No, okay, then we'll do something new for me. Okay, Lorelei Totten, Crest Engineering, and this, tonight we're here for SCA Properties LLC, lot 17.01, and it's actually two lots, and 18.01, block 6. First of all, if this is approved, the lots would be consolidated into one lot by deed. The site is located on Route 33 on the westbound lanes between Prineville Road and Applegarth Road, closer to Prineville Road. It's the Corbin Stone site that until PSE&G came through and cleared the easement and put up those tall utility poles, you couldn't see it. And now you can see it. It contains an existing, I guess I should show the existing conditions plan.
Well, maybe we should
Mark the
mark the
exhibit.
exhibit.
Okay, what I have up first is a site display. It is the landscaping plan that has been rendered.
Well, that could be A1.
And the other ones that I have are the set of plans that was submitted to you. Do you want that marked as well, or is it already an exhibit?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
The other plans are exactly the set of plans that was submitted to the board for review and consideration.
Convery, if you want, we can just refer to the exhibit, to the, the reference sheet, because it is part of the submission already.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the existing conditions plan.
Just for the record, Ms. Tom, just reference what sheet that is.
Oh, you know what? I have the wrong set of plans under here. We're only going to talk from this exhibit.
Okay.
I have the tile work set from a few weeks ago. My apologies. Okay, so the existing conditions on this site, there is an existing barn that's located in the lower corner of the proposed building. There is an existing home that is located in the rear of the property, close to where the dumpster is located now. There's a couple of other remains of buildings in the middle where the parking lot is. It contains about 78 trees. We counted and we identified by size and type the trees. When this gets constructed, we would try to save as many as we can. We know we can save what's shown in green on here, and at the time of construction, should you approve this, we would stake out the limits of clearing and then identify the trees and submit a building permit. So there are some like 12-inch, some larger trees. They've been growing here since this business has been in place. There's also a show area in the lower right-hand corner of the property with stacks of stone. The Corbin Stone sells stone to landscapers, large stone, not small stone, but large, like wall stone or paver type stones. What else is there on the site? There's a septic system located in the back next to the existing dwelling. The existing dwelling used to be up in front, close to the eastbound lanes of Route 33, because this property lost half of its size when Route 33 was widened back in the 50s, 60s, I think. So that's why it's only as deep as it is, because I think they widened 33 by 70 feet, something like that. There are a small amount of riparian buffer in the upper right-hand corner, which is the northeast corner of the site, from a piece of the Millstone tributary that comes down from the Jack Morris site. There is also a little bit of wetlands off-site up here behind the old home, and there's a 50-foot buffer that comes onto the property. and we won't be disturbing it. I know this plan shows like we are, but we're not going to be disturbing it. We have submitted for, or we are about to submit for, a disturbance permit for this. If you don't have wetlands on your site, you can't submit for an LOI because they're on the other site. So we're submitting for a disturbance, an absence, presence, or a footprint disturbance permit. Let's see. So that's, and the site slopes, a little bit of the front slopes to Route 33. There is an inlet along the frontage near the driveway that picks up that runoff. The remainder of the site slopes mostly to the rear, a little bit to each side. So the proposal is to construct a 12,300 square foot building with, I think, 2,440 square feet of, no, I'm sorry, it's 2,200 square feet of office on 2 floors. Most of it's on the first floor and a little bit's on the second floor. The site itself contains 1.52 acres. There are a number of existing variances. The property should be 7 acres in this zone, which is the Highway Development District. We have adequate frontage, but we don't have adequate lot depth. The lot depth is supposed to be 500 feet, and we only have 182.57 in existing conditions. Let's see. So those are the existing conditions. So we're proposing the 12,300 square foot building and a parking lot along with solid waste and recycling enclosure, a turnaround for the vehicles. The parking lot has 23, well actually it's 22 spaces, but one of them counts as 2 because we're proposing a charging station space next in the line of the spaces adjacent to the building itself. We could have the right amount of spaces if we restriped and asked for a variance from lot space width, which sometimes is granted, but because it's such a small de minimis amount, we felt it was better to have the 10-foot wide parking spaces. We calculated the parking based upon the office space and then called the rest of the space storage because there wasn't a better option in the ordinance for a print shop and studio. The people that occupy the office also work out in the print shop and studio, and there are 5 employees, and I believe it's going to stay approximately the same. So 23 spaces, 22 spaces is more than is really required, but we know you always look towards the future. What if Mr. Natinsky decides to retire in another 30 years? Then will it support another use? And if we don't put all those spaces in, it might not. So I know that the board always looks towards the future as well. It has a single entrance, egress and egress. I know that there's a comment in the planner's letter that 2 are preferred. It is separated by an island, and it's required because of DOT requirements, which Mr. Troutman will go into a little bit more detail when we get there. The stormwater management consists of the parking lot being porous pavement with stone underneath, and the water is treated for total suspended solids by falling through the parking lot. And then it is captured in the stone underneath, and its peak rate of runoff is slowed by the outlet structure, and then it's outletted back into where it goes now. The roof drains are picked up from the building. The roof slopes to the rear, so we have a line of roof drains across the back, and they go into a perforated pipe into the stone. So they don't need treatment as long as the gutters have screens over them to keep leaves and so on from getting into it. Let's see, I just want to look at my outline so I don't forget anything. Talked about the circulation. It's pretty straightforward. There are no islands here, which is actually also I think it's a variance. Because you don't have double stacked large parking area here. You have parking around the perimeter adjacent to landscaping. So there's no, I mean, normally you have islands in a supermarket parking lot or another large retail or commercial use where you want to break up an acre or 2 acres or 3 acres of parking with some green. In this case, the whole site is only 1.5 acres, and so the building takes up probably a third of it, and the parking takes up a third. So it's not a large space. Let's see, drainage sewer. This is within the sewer service district. However, sewer service is not available at this area now. So we're proposing a septic system. Should it ever become available and within a certain distance of the site, then I believe by ordinance the owner would have to tie in. I think he'd rather have a sewer system rather than a septic system. It's a little bit, I don't know if it's more reliable. I think it is. And there's no water available in this area either. So we're proposing a well on the property. The lighting, we have LED lighting for the parking lot, and it's bright enough to provide adequate lighting. One of the comments was that dark sky, there's a dark sky organization that recommends that you only have lighting up to 3,000 Kelvin. So I did speak to our lighting consultant, and he explained a lot to me about LEDs that I didn't know before, and I won't go into. But bottom line is we can reduce the Kelvin, which is the temperature of the light, down to, I think it's at 4,000 now. We can turn it down to, around 3,000. 4,000, just for interest, is closest to the HID lighting, and 5,000 is a bright white color, which is almost what we have proposed here, and 3,500 or 3,000 is looks like the LPS lights, the older lights, which are the yellow color when you go into a parking lot. The one good thing about LEDs is they hold their level of light that they start out with much better than the old style lights, which after a few years, they don't give the light that they did when they started. Let's see. So that's about lighting and landscaping. So with the landscaping, there is a landscaping buffer required of 100 feet. And we are not able to provide that and develop the site as with this building, which is a modest building, a size, if we were to conform to it, because the 60 is here, so the 100-foot would come a very small area where you could put a building. So we're asking for a waiver from the full landscape. Also of interest is that there is a 20-foot easement across the front of the property that I always get them mixed up, that the electric company needed, even though their utility poles may or may not be in it on the edge. They still need it for access to their utility poles. And within the easement that everybody was granted, it says that you can't have very high grades in that area, and nor can you have high trees, because they need access to get to their utility poles and lines and provide maintenance. So actually, you can only put small shrubs and so on in the front area of it, and you can only raise the grade a little bit. So we worked with that. We worked with the septic system, which needed to be in the front because that's where the appropriate soils types were, and came up with this landscaping that you see, which is a mixture of evergreens and street trees, shrubs. Also of interest is there's a single-family home on the left side or the west side of this property, and in the gap where the house is, we're proposing a row of evergreens to help block the view. We also laid the property out so that the parking lot was on the far side from this residence that's located to the west of the site. Because the lot to the east of the site currently is vacant. So if it's developed at some time, this parking lot will already be there. So it won't be a surprise. We have provided some berming about 3 feet on either side of the driveway. And like I said, a variety of trees and plants and shrubs. And we think that the plan is going to very nicely accent the building, which is a very nice looking building, as Mr. Radasti will describe to you, and he's available to speak. Let's see. So the height of the berms is variance, and the width, and I just forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, so we feel that this is an appropriate type of landscaping for this buffer and in this particular area with the circumstances of a septic system, 90-foot high utility poles, or however tall they are, they're huge. The 20-foot easement where there's restrictions on what you can install in those easements. And because it's a very nice looking building, it's not just, well, the barn that's there now is a barn. It's not really attractive, it's a little old. This will be very nice looking in comparison. So the aesthetics of this area will be improved greatly. Did I miss anything?
Few things, and I'll just ask you the questions. How are we dealing with refuse and recyclables?
Well, so the refuse, we have it in a board-on-board fence enclosure, and it's going to be collected by private haulers. There's a room for recycling in a trash container. This type of business doesn't create significant amounts of trash. It's mostly paper waste and recycling. And how often that gets picked up will depend upon how much they create. So my building where we are, we have our trash picked up once a week and the recycling once a week. So that's probably where somebody would start. And then if they need, like say recycling because they get a lot of boxes more frequently, then he would work with the hauler to pick it up more frequently. If say trash, I mean most everybody has a lot more recycling than trash. So if that needs only once every 2 weeks, that's what it'll be. But it will be a trial and error until they get the right amount of times to pick it up. There was a request for I've never actually come across this before, an operations manual for the recycling and trash. So we can prepare that, but it's the first time I ever heard that.
We'll
so that's
provide that.
interesting.
That's
yes.
Okay.
It's just you learn something new every day, right?
All right, just a couple other follow-up questions. So this is not a retail site.
Correct.
This is going to be a workspace with 5 employees. We have
Right.
22 parking spaces. So in terms of the recycling and trash pickup, obviously that's not going to have much impact on this parking lot.
Correct.
Okay. What about loading and unloading?
So the loading and unloading is interesting for this facility too. There's 2 overhead doors. So sometimes the loading and unloading might even back into the building, but usually they back up to the loading doors. Most of the types of trucks that come, and they are daily, are UPS and FedEx type trucks. I understand that during the holidays, because the quantity of deliveries is higher, the trucks might be a little bit bigger than their standard bread truck type style. We also, once in a great while, they might get a tractor trailer. So we have a turnaround spot for that tractor trailer to be able to come in, turn around, and back up and leave. As I said, there are only 5 employees, and once in a while, a client will. This is a business. Did I just go
button maybe and it'll come back on. Laura, is that right?
Holding on too tight, I guess, huh? It's a business to business, so if a client's coming in to talk about whatever it is they want to have done graphically, they make an appointment. So it's an appointment only. So there won't be conflicts between cars coming in and the trash or the recycling being picked up.
There's no work that occurs outside. Everything's going to be contained in the building.
That's correct.
Even work on, I know Mr. Natinsky mentioned to me, they do some work for Middlesex County for some of the buses and vehicles where they do graphic arts on that. That's all done inside.
Yes,
right?
they pull the vehicles in. They manage it by only taking a couple in at a time. So it's not. 15 vehicles, small buses in here at one time. They will have a couple at a time and manage it so that it doesn't overflow the parking lot or become a problem.
Okay. All right. And last question. I know we spoke a little bit about lighting.
Thank you.
The hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Yes.
There's no need to have lights on in the evening. Is that correct?
Only security lighting, so it can be lowered for security and put on timers. And we will add those notes to the plans should you approve this project.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything further of Ms. Totten.
Thank you. Mark, do you have any questions?
I can go through my review letter. It's dated January 12th, 2023. Do you agree to meet all the comments in the review letter?
You know what, Mark? I think so. If you want, Bill, I wanted to sit down. We can go over that.
I did write a letter responding to how we would respond to every comment, and I don't believe there's any problems. At the time, I had not spoken to the light vendor yet, but
Yeah, I don't believe you took exception to anything in that response.
yes, yes,
No, nothing technical.
yes.
Nothing technical at all. We can, a lot of it is plan revisions, which adding notes, we can do that. That's fine.
And you're agreeable to curb and sidewalk along Route 33, subject to the DOT's approval?
Yes.
Chairman, I have nothing else. They've agreed to meet my comments in the review letter.
Thank you. Mika?
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Totten, I think it'll probably be more discussed during the variance time when you're giving your planning testimony. The couple of questions, would you be talking about the freestanding signage and providing the lighting information that you've asked?
Mr. Radasti will be
Okay.
talking about the freestanding signage. They're on his plans.
Okay. And in terms of the operations of the studio area, in terms of noise generating, would that be complying the performance standard of?
Yes, yeah, that'll be compliant, and we will agree to a condition that we'll have no work done on the outside. Everything will be done internally.
Okay. Nothing further.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah. The only question I have is, this is an area of our affordable housing remediation. You have 300 acres back behind there that's going to have a mixture of affordable and market rate housing. There's going to be at the corner of Prineville Road, a commercial site. And at Bentley Road, there's another commercial site. And so the people are going to be walking along 33. Is there any room to get, I see you have the septic in the front too. Is there any way of getting a sidewalk?
Yeah, I think that was one of the recommendations. So,
Yes.
yeah, there's going to be a sidewalk. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Good.
I think it's a beautiful operation. The gentleman that's proposing it started his business in Monroe, grew it in Monroe to a second larger thing, and I'm just happy to see him getting his wishes fulfilled.
Thank you for those kind words, Mr. Riggs. Thank you.
Any other questions?
My only question is, are there any variances we're reviewing or?
Yeah, we have, Ms. Totten is also a
Variances
planner,
are coming.
and she's going to cover that at the end. So
Sounds good.
We're going to tie it all in at the end with the planner, so. Yeah, we can do that. You know, Mr. Gaffney, one last thing before I get to Mr. Troutman and Mr. Radosky, who I know will be very brief. Ms. Totner just wants to mention the outside agent, status of outside agency approvals, just to put that on the record.
So we have an exemption letter from Middlesex County Planning Board. We have a review letter from FSCD that we will address simultaneously should you grant approval. We have submitted to Delaware Raritan Canal Commission, and technically the project is complete. It is just waiting for a township resolution of approval and the county exemption letter. We are getting ready we're preparing plans to submit to DOT for a driveway access permit. That has not been done yet, but it is in process. We have internal letters from the Environmental Commission, which I can address if you like, but I don't believe there's any concerns. We have a historic commission letter that says that the property does not have any historic value, that the building itself might have had, but it's pretty dilapidated, so they might at demolition want to come in and try to take some parts to it.
And we have no objection to that, Mr. Chairman.
I did speak with the fire official prior to designing this. One of the variances required that I didn't mention is that the parking is within 30 feet. And he did not have a problem with it when I spoke with him, and I don't believe we've gotten his comment letter yet. The EMS is happy with the project, or let's put it this way, they're not unhappy with the project. I can't remember if we got a letter from the police.
Not yet.
Okay. Let's see. I believe that's most of the outside agencies. So we're well on our way from approval point of view for outside agencies.
Thank you. And Mr. Sachs, before we continue, Ms. Westlake, do you want to come up and be heard? And this would be with respect to PB 1218-19.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you. I'm here just for...
Just going for the mic.
Oh, sorry. I'm here just for an extension of the site plan approval that was granted by this board a couple of years ago. As I'm sure you're all aware, part of the problem that we had is just dealing with COVID and trying to get everything, I's dotted, T's crossed, so on and so forth. So we're, I would say, on the slow side in getting our act together to perfect a site plan. We also unfortunately had to change engineers, so the new engineer is trying to come up to speed on all the site plan issues. We also requested and were very kindly provided with a subdivision, which I'm also in the process of trying to perfect right now. So just would greatly appreciate your indulgence in granting us an extension of our site plan approval.
Thank you. Questions?
I prepared a resolution for an extension of time for preliminary and final major site plan with both variances. I relied upon a letter from Rosalind Westlake to me dated February 10th, 2023, outlining some of the issues that caused this to get delayed. Based upon my view of it, I would recommend that you grant the extension of time for Appleton Realty LLC PB 1218-19 at this time.
What's the term?
The term is
Can we
190
talk into
days.
the microphone, Jerry, Steve, John? Microphones, please. Thank you.
It would be 190 days additional time. And it starts March, it's actually a one-year extension of time to March 25, 2024.
So it's 1 year.
1 year.
I'll move.
Okay, any other questions before? Okay, David, you gonna move?
I'll move.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Polidoro?
Yes.
Mr. Rothman?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Ms. Brodsky?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Markel?
Yes.
Chairman Gaffrey?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And also, again, thank you for the accommodation.
Okay, next witness.
Next witness, Mr. Jay Troutman.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God.
Yes, I do.
Would you state your full name?
Yes, I do.
Spell your last name, please.
J. Troutman, Troutman.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I'll have him qualified, although I think Mr. Troutman's probably familiar with this board as well.
Yeah, unless there's any objection, we'll just accept his credentials. Okay, you
Okay.
can proceed, Mr. Sachs.
All right, so Mr. Troutman's testifying as a traffic engineer. Mr. Troutman, if you could give the board the benefit of your analysis. and your
Yes.
conclusions. Thank you.
We were retained to look at the site plan, analyze the trip generation, and also process the NJDOT access permit that will be required for the driveway on 33 westbound. Site is under DOT jurisdiction for that access driveway. The proposed plan, from an access standpoint, is going to rectify the, what I'll call uncontrolled, non-compliant access that takes place along that frontage right now with a conforming driveway conforming to the DOT access code. It is a low traffic generator, a very small amount of square footage with a small amount of employees. It qualifies for a minor NJDOT access permit. Based on our preliminary analysis, we expect that permit to be granted with the design that's before you. There will be no significant traffic impact from this use off-site. We also reviewed the parking and on-site traffic circulation. It's all been dimensioned properly for on-site vehicle circulation. There's adequate parking for the traffic and the parking demand that's expected. And we will also comply with Mr. Razamovit's comments regarding including the curb and sidewalk in the NJDOT application.
Okay, and Jay, just a couple questions. So one of the questions I know Mr. Razamovich raised was regarding the width of the driveway. If you could just briefly touch on that.
Yes, we worked with Crest on that design. It's sized to accommodate larger design vehicles that will occasionally use the site, and also sized in accordance with the DOT requirements.
Okay, and in terms of parking, I know you heard the testimony. We're proposing 22 parking spaces, although we're getting credit for an additional parking space because of the EV. He's got 5 employees. It's not a retail site. In your professional opinion, is the parking adequate on this site to service what's being proposed?
Yes, more than adequate.
Okay. Okay, I don't know if I have any further questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Caffrey, quite frankly. And I think there were some comments, again, Mr. Razamovich raised regarding traffic and circulation. Whatever's requested from a technical standpoint, we'll comply with.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I would just ask, the ingress and egress, can that accommodate the occasional tractor trailer that comes in without turning into, the left turn lanes? Or, I'm sorry, the left lane of Route 33?
Yes.
So it can swing in without crossing the lines? I have nothing else.
Thank you.
I have no further.
Okay, any questions from the board? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to swear you in at this time. Just swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you God.
I do.
State your full name, please.
Stephen Radosti. I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey.
Spell your last name, please.
Radosti.
Mr. Radowski, if you can give the board the benefit of your professional background.
Yes, so I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. I graduated from New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1992 with a Bachelor of Architecture degree. Became licensed in 1996. I'm a principal in charge of operations at President Radowski Architects for approximately 20 years. I presented in front of dozens of boards throughout New Jersey, including this board.
Okay, I'll accept, subject to any objections.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, Steve, if you can, I know you've got some exhibits. Why don't you refer to which ones you want to first, and some follow-up questions if necessary.
Okay, so I have a total of 3 exhibits, but actually 2 of them were exactly what I submitted, sheets SK1 and SK2. And then the third one is a new exhibit. It's material photo board.
So let's mark that one, I guess, as A2.
A2.
Okay.
A2.
Okay.
Thank you. So the proposed building will be a printing service office building for the applicant. It consists of 2,200 square feet of offices on 2 levels and a 10,100 square feet of printing operations at the first floor for a total of 12,300.
Can you put the microphone on?
All right, that's better. The building is a non-combustible construction made of steel and concrete construction and is approximately 30 feet tall to its peak. The main facade facing Route 33 consists of 4 main facade materials in almost equal areas. The building will have a dark gray split-faced block water table that provides a horizontal element that visually grounds the building to the earth. At the print shop portion of the building, we have smooth 16-inch wide vertical metal siding of a light gray color. That's this here. At the office area, we have a metal siding with a horizontal orientation. This siding has deep grooves, which will create an interesting shadow pattern. In addition to the various facade materials, we have a 2-story glass portion at the entry area and large punched windows at the offices. The large windows will allow lots of natural light into the office area. The print shop will have clear story windows up high to provide natural lighting, as well as to visually break up the facade. The design on the south elevation continues around to the east elevation, where the front entry is located. A large 2-story glass area accentuates the front entry. The front entry consists of double aluminum and glass doors with a projecting metal panel clad panel, which is clad with metal overhang. The building has a dark colored standing seam metal roof that pitches away from the main south facade. All of the facades of the building are color coordinated with various shades of gray. On the south face of the building, we propose a building mounted sign. The side will be internally illuminated channel lettering of 2 feet high by 7 feet long for a total of 14 square feet. Next to the building sign are 24-inch high aluminum address numerals. So in addition to the building mounted sign, we're proposing a monument sign. The proposed sign would be 6 feet high and 8'4" wide for a total of 50 square feet. The sign would be constructed of a dark gray split face block to match the materials of the building. The center of the sign would include 2 sign boxes of each one of 1'8" in height by 6 feet long. The top sign box would be internally illuminated with LED lights. The lower sign box would be a programmable LED digital sign. Both of these signs would be turned off at night after the office closes. The top sign, the translucent sign material, would would limit any direct viewing of the internal LED lighting. And the lower sign would be programmable so that it can be dimmed so that it's not too bright. I also believe that our building meets the requirements of the building design standards of section 108-12.3. Number E1 of that section lists some acceptable facade materials, such as anodized aluminum, baked enamel metal panels, precast concrete, and similar materials. We have 4 different types of facade materials.
Mr. Radowski, this is A2 that you're referring to now, right?
Yes, that is correct. Exhibit A2. So on this board, I'm showing a photo of some of the different materials that might not show up so well in the small color drawing. On here, you could see, we have the split face block, which has a rough texture. We have the vertical metal siding, which is wide, 6 inches wide and flat and smooth. And then over the office area, we have a thinner horizontal metal panel, which has these large, deep shadow lines. And that's about 4 to 6 inches in height of each of those horizontal pieces. We also have a large amount of glass, and then we have some opaque panels at the glass. And then up here, we have a close-up of the stainless steel metal roof. We believe all the different textures that we have, the rough stone, the shadow lines on the horizontal elements, the vertical elements, which are smooth, make the building comply with this portion of the ordinance, and also it's showing that there's a lot of thought and a lot of interest that went into the building. It might not be so visible on the black and white drawings. The drawings do not currently denote roof overhangs. However, we will add roof overhangs to the building to comply with number E2. The front entry is identified with a 2-story glass element and a projected overhang, and that would comply with E3. And then we're not going to use pipe columns, so by that nature, we comply with E4. The print shop will have interior radiant heaters, while the office area will be heated and cooled. The AC unit will be located, the air conditioning unit will be located outside the office in this front corner here, and it'll be screened with landscaping.
No rooftop equipment,
That was
correct?
my exact
Okay.
sense. There won't be any rooftop units since in the office all the HVAC will be internal, and then for the print shop it'll all be internal, and for the office area we'll have heating and cooling, but the unit will be located outside and be screened. The building will not be LEED certified. However, we have significant green design elements. The building will utilize several construction materials that were produced within a 500-mile radius of the building. This will reduce effects on the environment from excessive construction material transportation. Recycled materials will be utilized in its construction. We'll have low E thermally broken glazing that will be utilized to reduce heat gain and energy loss. We'll have energy efficient HVAC units, and we'll also have energy efficient LED lighting will be utilized. Occupancy sensors will be utilized inside the building to control interior lights. And we'll also have high R value insulated doors for the building.
Okay. Mr. Radowski, just one question.
Yes.
If in fact the applicant wants to put a generator in, is there an area to put that in as well?
There is. If we were to put a generator in, it would be behind. Actually, I'm going to refer to the site plan here. This is the site display drawing, which is Exhibit A1. If we had a generator, it would be in this general area behind the building over there.
Okay. All right. All right, Mr. Radowski, I don't have any further questions. I'm just looking through the planner's report. And I think you may have covered everything. I know one of the concerns raised was the design, the facade, but I think with the colored rendering, hopefully we've answered that. I think you spoke about the signage. I know Ms. Totten is going to talk about this one variance we need for the sign, but all of the other signage on site will be fully compliant with the ordinance?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. I don't have anything further.
We should mark that one exhibit A3.
The floor plan?
What,
We can do that.
Sure. And so, by the way, this floor plan is the floor plan that I originally submitted, dated 12/1/22, sheet SK1.
We'll mark it.
You have any questions, Mark?
I would just ask you, come back to the sign. You talked
Yes.
about the programmable sign. Can you give us a little more information on that? I did not see that previously.
So the monument sign is 6 feet in height and 8'4" in length. And in the center of the sign, there are two sign boxes. Each one is 1'8" high by 6 feet in length. The one on the top is LED internally illuminated sign, and the bottom one is a digital sign of the same size. And that one is programmable, so the lighting level could be reduced or raised.
And you could change the message for that?
Yes,
You
you
can have it flashing, you can have it do all sorts of things.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do
Essentially.
flashing, but yes.
Okay. Chairman, I'm going to defer to our planner to talk a little bit more about that particular sign and use.
I think I was just looking at the ordinance. I mean, the ordinance doesn't expressly permit any moving digital signs per se. So I don't think this would be a permitted. It would become a variance that you would need for the digital portion of the moving sign.
Okay, I mean, we can have Ms. Totten cover that. Mr. Chairman, I think we can agree, it's only going to advertise his business, so it will not be advertising any other businesses. It'll not be flashing, exploding, the kinds of things that we don't want to see on a digital sign, so.
I mean, we'll wait for the planner to testify, but one thing I would recommend is we could get little more details on the timings of how soon. It should not basically impede the motorist traveling on the road as to how often it's changing, its digital level, and things like that. That's what I think would be needed.
And it will not, right, I understand what you're saying. It's not a billboard, so it's not going to change every 10 seconds.
Okay.
We can provide information on that, though. That's fine. I understand where you're coming from.
Any questions from the board?
I have a question. Why do you need a digital sign?
Well, I
If
think,
it's just by appointment only, why can't it just say the name of the company and that's it? What are you going to do? Put the weather up there or something like that? I mean, what's this point? I don't see the point of a digital sign.
well, Mr. Natinsky, come on up if you want to comment
either
on
we
that.
swear him in or he
Yeah.
speaks for you.
Why don't you raise your right hand, I swear you in.
You swear to tell the truth and the whole truth.
I do.
State your
Mr.
full name, spell your last name, please.
Okay, Mr. Natinsky, one of the questions came up about this type of signage. What would be displayed on that digital sign?
Probably our specials for
Okay,
the month, and if we have any job openings.
okay. Okay, and it's not going to change. Would you have any problem with agreeing to some restriction that it would not change over a periodic basis?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I understand signage, that seems to be the modern trend in signage, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
For gas stations.
No, I understand. I mean, we've all seen digital signs, that will change every 10 seconds, 30 seconds. We can agree that it would, even though it would be digital, it's primarily a static sign. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Natinsky. I appreciate it. Okay. And I'll have my planner will just cover that variance, so.
Okay.
And that's my last witness again would be Lorelei Totten. If
So it's previously sworn, so she doesn't have to be sworn again.
By the way, I will offer to the planning board, I know other municipalities have accepted that. If the township wants us to put any messages on our digital display board, we would be willing to do that. If there needs to be a public service announcement, that could be programmed onto this digital board.
Mr. Chairman, Larry, the concern we're kicking around here is that triggers a use variance.
Okay.
Whether or not it triggers a use variance, and as you know, we wouldn't be at the right board.
Correct. So maybe we don't need to have
That's
a,
the concern that we have, and
Okay.
we want to hear from the planner.
Okay. Well, in light of that, I may make a request that we're not going to have a digital sign. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I'll have my planner cover that. Okay, Ms. Totten, I know you were previously sworn. Let's talk about the bulk variances that are required, and I know there's a few design waivers as well. Is that correct?
Yes, so just summarize.
Microphone.
I'll just summarize the variances to make sure that we pick them all up so that I don't miss one. We have 2 existing bulk variances and 2 proposed bulk variances, as well as we have the landscape depth variance, the 1 parking space variance, and then in the buffer, we have the width and the height, and we also have a sign in the buffer, monument sign.
Okay.
And additionally, I guess a digital sign is not expressly permitted, so that becomes a variance too. And I guess we'll talk about that one last.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Talk about the dimensional variances that we require first.
Okay, so with regard to the first 2 variances, which are the minimum lot area and the minimum lot depth, those are existing conditions, and therefore those variances are hardships. And for the positive criteria, part of the variance requirements for hardship positive criteria is to show that we're carrying out the purposes of zoning for the general welfare of the public. So we are providing, G, sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of different types of uses, in this case, a commercial use, both for the public and private, according to the respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. And in particular, this particular business also does a lot of government work, and I understand does a lot of work in Monroe with various agencies in Monroe. Also, to provide a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and a good civic design and arrangement. And so part of this deals with the way the site looks now. That's a very old business that's there now. It's going to be replaced by a brand new building, a brand new parking lot, modern. It's going to a modern type of design, not necessarily the building itself. I just mean compared to the old project. So it's going to be much more aesthetically pleasing as you drive by on the highway. So the existing bulk variances, the proposal will not have a substantial detriment to the public good because the lot has been that size for, I don't know, a lot of years since Route 33 was widened. And there's the improved vistage when you go by the site. And finally, there's going to be no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone to grant those, because this is obviously it's unique to this particular site in this location. So with regard to the 2 the 2 proposed variances, the lot width, the side yard setback and the rear yard setback. The rear yard setback is due to the property being very narrow and is related to the depth variance. And the side yard setback is required in order to provide adequate space on the property for a good parking lot circulation and our modest-sized building. And both of these can be granted, again, for the same positive reasons that we are providing, we're providing sufficient space in appropriate locations for this particular commercial use. And it services not only Monroe, but a lot of other communities in the area with business-to-business graphics. And we're improving the aesthetics of the site too. So both of those go along with supporting the the minimum side yard and the minimum rear yard. Also, one of the other variances is C, to provide adequate light, air, and open space. And even though we have these bulk requirements, lot size, and so on, we are not exceeding the maximum building percentage. In fact, I think we're at about half what the building coverage could be based upon the 1.5 acres. We also are about 2/3 of the requirement for total lot coverage, where we're at just under 20%, where 40% is 40. I'm sorry, we're at 43%, where 60 is permitted. And the FAR is only about half of what's permitted on this site. So we're not overdoing the site. We have a lot of landscaping. There's open space around the perimeter. The building is no closer to the side yard on the east side than the existing building is. It's no closer to the front of the property than that existing building is. Granted, it is a little bit bigger than that building. So I feel that this proposal will not have a substantial detriment to the public good, again, because it's a good use for this site. It improves the site. And it's not going to detract from the existing residence on the one side, or the vacant lot on the other side, or the development behind it, which is quite a ways away. It's like 800 or 900 feet, I believe, on the other side of some wetlands and a stream. And there's no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone and zone ordinance, again, because all of these characteristics are very unique to this site, and you're only approving, if you do approve, these variances just for this site. So then the next variance to discuss is the parking. That's a pretty straightforward variance as well. I did testify previously that it's probably an excessive number of spaces for the use that is being put to now, but we try to plan for the future, and we were able to provide 22 spaces, and the EV counts as 1 space, so we're down 1 space, and we don't need that space. If somebody came in the future, you could restripe some of the parking spaces, make them a little bit narrower, and you would have 24 spaces, and a 9-foot space is adequate for a business where people aren't coming and going. So if you had a visitors and an employees section, you would be able to support the total number of spaces. I believe that particular variance can be granted, again, for all of the same reasons as the previous ones, with regard to the positive criteria, and it will not have a substantial detriment to the public good, because there's adequate parking for the uses there now, and it could be made into 24 spaces that would adequately serve the purposes of a future building. And there's no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the plan and zone, the zone plan and ordinance, because again, it's for this very particular site, this particular layout, and the way the parking lot works with this, and the substantial improvement to just the aesthetics of the site. So then we come to the buffer. So the buffer, again, it's related to the depth of the lot. So it's partially a hardship. If you were, maybe it's wholly a hardship, at least the width of the buffer. If you were to enforce the buffer rule, you would have a very small building, very little parking, and I'm not quite sure what kind of a business would be able to be accommodated on this lot. So we've tried to mitigate that by the very nice building that Mr. Radasti described, with landscaping, various different types of trees and shrubs and so on, as I described, and as much of a berm as is possible under the circumstances of having a 20-foot electrical company easement in the front where you can't change the grade too much and you can't put large trees in that easement. And I also just discussed the other part of that variance, which is the berm height, and that's related to the width as well as the width being reduced not only from the 100 feet, which we would not have a very good project if we had to go to the 100 feet. And I'm not sure that any type of business would easily fit there. And the 20-foot easement in the front where we can only have low-growing shrubs and not much grade change in the front. So I think we've done my partner, Rick Weiner, is the landscape architect who laid this out, and I think he did a really nice job accenting the building, and we've put berms on each side of the driveway so that the entrance will look really nice. So I believe that this proposal will not have a substantial detriment to the public good because it's an improvement over what is there now. Right now, you have almost the full width of the property you can drive into. There's no curb or anything like that that will narrow down the driveway. There is a dirt driveway there that is used, but it's not as attractive as it will be. And again, this is for a very specific piece of property along Route 33, so I don't believe there's a substantial detriment to the impairment of the intent and purpose of the zone plan as well.
And before you get to the last variance, which will be deal with the signage, right now the existing house is 34 feet from the right-of-way?
The barn.
The barn is
is I think so.
Yes, 34 feet, and obviously we're going to be increasing that by about 20 feet to 54 feet.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Last variance deals with, I think, the signage. So let's briefly cover that.
Okay. So the digital sign, if it's relatively static, isn't that much different from a regular sign. So I'm not quite sure where the use comes in. I was thinking it was more like we were asking for a larger sign than is required. If so it would be a variance from what the surface of the sign looks like. And we have agreed to have it static and not moving. And it has, so I guess we need to determine whether it's a use variance first.
I don't think we heard that it's going to be static. I think we heard that it is going to be programmable and moving. And I think the ordinance, as it stands right now, does not necessarily say that any kind of moving, I know it's not flashing, but any kind of moving sign is permitted. So I think that's where the issue is coming, that any kind of movement on a sign is not expressly permitted currently.
Yeah, but let me, if I can maybe just respond to that. I mean, I perceive it as a bulk variance. Obviously, it's not permitted. And I think the question is the freestanding sign being permitted in that buffer area. That's the relief we're seeking. But this is a sign which is ancillary to the use of this property. Obviously, it's an identification sign. I think if it was another type of sign, i.e. billboard, or another sign that's not related to this business, certainly I think it could trigger a use variance. Respectfully, I think it's still a bulk variance. I know that, the question is whether or not a moving sign would trigger a use variance. We're not going to flash. We're not going to scroll. The content may change periodically, but we could probably agree that the content, would change every 10 minutes. I mean, it's not that important you know, that it be constantly changing like a billboard. I mean, I'll leave that to you, but I'm not sure I'm not sure it rises to the realm of a use variance. I mean, the relief we're seeking really is a sign that's ancillary really to the advertisement of this business. But I'll defer to you guys.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and typically the problem is we have a section in which it says prohibited signs, and under that, the way it reads is any moving or revolving sign and signs using blinking, flashing, or sequential lighting is prohibited. So, you know, it doesn't get into how much blinking or how much moving or how much, you know, is acceptable or not acceptable right now. That's what it's saying.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may jump in. I understand the flashing, the blinking, the expressing. However, I believe in the township, we do have at least two places where we do have signs that do electronically change. Now, if they want to restrict it to once a week or something like that, but if he's got a business that changes things weekly, semi-monthly, whatever, I don't see a problem. I believe we have a Chabad that has signs that change, and I believe we also have a warehouse, storage facility with signs changing. So I don't think we should. I think it should be open for discussion. I'll leave it at that.
If I could have just said, we had a major discussion on this when we allowed the sign for the storage facility, because we were concerned with all the same concerns you're bringing up. And we took it to the police department and had them render their decision. They said it would not be distracting to the traffic.
But this is 33.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say the storage facility went to the zoning board, and not just for the sign, but that was a use variance, if I recall. But it was at the zoning board and got hurt. As far as the other sign, I don't recall. The Chabad, I believe, was also at the.
Mr. Chairman, I can make
that might have been at the zoning board. I don't recall.
Let's make it easy for you. All right. We'll agree to a static sign for the time being. All right. If in fact we decide that we want to seek a different type of, and I'm not saying flashing because flashing is the wrong word to ever say in front of a board.
Sequential lighting.
but a sign that may change periodically, we could always go in front of the zoning board. But we'll agree for static for now. I mean, of course, that static could change once a month. I mean, you know what? Let's define what static means, but for now, we'll keep it as static. Okay, so I don't want to.
Are we defining it right now? What's static?
I don't want to co-opt your ordinance. I'm not looking to do that. So. Okay.
So are we defining static right now? Or
no, I don't think we can. I don't know what static means.
Okay. So right now you're saying it's going to be a static sign.
Static. If we seek relief, we'll seek relief.
It would seem that we should resolve it now as long as the issue's up.
I guess my concern.
I don't think we can resolve it right now, because if we're talking about use variance, we'd have to go before the Board of Adjustment.
I hear you.
I don't think anybody wishes to do that at this time.
Okay.
Unless, of course, you change your ordinance. Then
it's not happening
okay.
tonight.
All right, that's fine. We'll agree for static for now. We're here. We're not looking to go to the zoning board for this application. So,
while we're talking about signs and buffer zones, Mika has pointed out that you need a variance to put a freestanding sign within the buffer area.
Yes, that's.
You're seeking a variance for that?
We're seeking a variance for the sign itself, yes. And I think our planners covered that. So.
Yeah, the planner did mention that variance, and they are seeking. I guess the issue is there's nowhere else to put that sign other than the buffer because it's along Route 33 frontage. So they did mention that one.
Yes.
Ms. Totten, anything else?
Well, I can speak to that was, I was going to talk about that with the sign. So the sign is technically a variance because it's in the location is a variance because it's in the buffer. However, in the buffer, the distance required by the township off the property line, which I think is 20 feet, is the most appropriate place for an identification sign to be to help people find the site. If you put it behind the buffer, in this case, you end up in the parking lot, and you're also 50 feet off of the right-of-way line, which is pretty far back for somebody driving westbound on 33 that wants to enter, and then they would potentially miss the driveway, have to go up to Applegarth, do a U-turn, go back down to Prineville, do another U-turn to get back. So from a safety perspective, visibility for the sign, I think that locating it in the buffer and the standard distance from the right-of-way line, if it were not a buffer, is the best way to go about this. It's outside the site triangle. I checked that myself because I don't want anybody trying to pull on to Route 33 and not be able to see, although it's on the other side. So anyway, I think that that particular variance promotes I think it's number 1, which is the safety, or not goal A, which includes safety. I don't remember the exact one, but it's secure from fire, floods, and other things. So I think it promotes that goal of safety, as well as it meets the ordinance in size, so it's not too tall. It's landscaped, so it's going to be attractive. It's going to match the building. So it's not going to have a negative impact on the public good for those reasons. It doesn't detract from the ability to landscape as much as we have landscaped in that area. So there's no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone and zone plan for those reasons.
All right, thank you, Ms. Todd.
And any other questions from the board? Hearing none, does any member of the public wish to be heard on this? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sachs, is there anything else?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes our presentation. I mean, I think we are going to build a very attractive building on Route 33 on somewhat of a compromising site. And I think it'll fit in well with the surrounding uses there, and urge that this board grant us an approval.
Thank you. Is there any further comment from the board? Is there a motion from the board?
I think there has to be a decision as to whether or not you're granting preliminary and final.
Yeah.
With both variants.
Are we looking at both preliminary and final, or are we just going to rule for preliminary? That's my question.
Right.
I have to defer to our professionals as to what their thoughts are on that.
Pass these together.
What's the question? I'm sorry.
Preliminary and final together.
Can we vote
Well,
on it together?
It's Chair, typically up to the board. This is a relatively small application, and as long as the sign issue is resolved, I mean, I don't have any objection with it moving forward with preliminary and final. But what is the position of the sign? So,
yeah,
that's what I'd like to know.
It'll.
Microphone.
Do you want to answer it, or should I make a motion?
Microphone, please.
Well, I'll let me answer it, and then you can make a motion.
Oh, okay.
My concern is your professionals have indicated that it might trigger a use variance. I don't want it to trigger a use variance. We are seeking a bulk variance for the location of same, but I don't want to trigger a use variance, because then I've wasted an hour and 15 minutes in front of this board, and I don't want to have to come back. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I can be so bold to ask, I mean, it's up to the applicant if you wanted to seek preliminary and then figure out the sign issue in between coming back for final, or just move forward without
we can proceed forward.
Revolving sign.
I think the sign for now can be static. If we decide we want to really change the signage here and it's really integral, we'll either come in front of the zoning board, or maybe the township will adopt a new ordinance. But
Mr. Chairman, and I would have no objection to preliminary and final, certainly the conditions of any approval. I'm comfortable with working that out with the applicant's engineer.
Sure. Do we have a motion?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to point out, it's been an hour and 20, not an hour and 15. Okay. But with that said, this is a commercial application for an existing commercial resident here in Monroe. It sounds like a great rateable. I see no impact on traffic when you have 5 employees. I'm going to move for preliminary and final approval on this.
With
And-
bulk variant.
With bulk variances. Thank you. That's my motion.
I'll second.
Ms. Polidoro?
Yes.
Mr. Rothman?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Ms. Brodsky?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Markel?
Yes.
Chairman Gaffrey?
Yes.
Thank you, members of the board. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So what kind of?
Okay, why don't we take 5 minutes?
Right idea. Really a nice man, really is.
Chairman.
Okay, and let me just announce the agenda. So this will be PB 1253-22 Amazon.com Services LLC.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Singer from the law firm of Porzio, Bromberg, and Newman on behalf of the applicant, Amazon.com Services LLC. We're before the board tonight seeking an amended site plan approval along with variance approvals and design waivers for its last mile facility located at 6 Farrington Boulevard, otherwise known as Block 8, Lot 8.5. The property is located in the L1 Light Industrial Zone, which permits the warehouse distribution use. The applicant previously received approval for this facility in the spring of 2021. The applicant is proposing modifications to the site and building to facilitate operational efficiencies at the existing last mile facility. These modifications include adjustments to loading docks and truck court, parking reconfiguration, and new signage. Variance and design waivers that the applicant is requesting include variance relief associated with the proposed installation of directional signs throughout the site, and variance relief for lighting levels above the 0.5 horizontal foot candle, along with any design waivers, including wheel stops, that are necessary to facilitate this proposed modification. Tonight, you will be hearing from the following witnesses in support of this application and the requested relief. First, and to my right, is Ms. Aristi from Amazon. Second, you'll hear from our civil engineer, Brian Hall from CISO. And lastly, our traffic engineer, Alan Lothian from Langen Engineering. At this time, I'd like to have our first witness sworn in.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your full name and spell your last name for us.
Danielle Aristi, Aristy.
Thank you. Ms. Aristi, can you please advise the board of your position with Amazon and how long you have been affiliated with the company?
I am a senior entitlements manager and I've been with the company for 2.5 years.
Can you speak
Can you
up a
hear me?
little bit?
Sorry. I'm a senior entitlements manager for the Northeast and I've been with the company for 2.5 years.
Can you please provide to the board an overview of the last mile delivery station and what operational changes are being proposed?
Absolutely. So our goal with the changes that we're proposing, which are triggering some minor modifications to the site, are to enhance the customer experience and add some operational efficiencies to the current operation. The site is going to remain a last mile delivery station. The most significant change will be the change in our delivery method to customers. So right now, the site uses delivery vans, which are the branded Amazon vans. I'm sure that most people here are familiar with. And it has a small amount of flex drivers. And so what we're going to be doing is pivoting to all flex driver delivery method. Flex drivers are individuals who sign up for the job via an app, similar to an Uber or a Lyft, and they are able to have the flexibility to set their schedule and to deliver packages directly to the customer's doorstep. It also provides us with more flexibility in the time frame that we're able to schedule those deliveries, hence the flex terminology here. But what's going to happen is the site will remain a 24/7 operation, but with the flex deliveries, there'll be a broader time frame of deliveries for the customer from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. And what this does is it allows for us to shorten the delivery time to the customer. So you could even get a package the same day that you order it. So if one of us wakes up and we realize that we're at the very end of our deodorant stick, we can order it and come home from work and it could be on our doorstep. So the changes operationally, aside from the change in the delivery method, There is an auger and compactor being proposed to be added. Right now, the site doesn't have any equipment to compact the recycling or the refuse. So that will be an enhancement, and it'll allow for the carting company to come and pick up that equipment directly from pick up the refuse and the recycling directly from that equipment. To facilitate the support of this operations, we'll be increasing our local workforce from roughly 150 associates to 880 associates. Approximately 20 to 24 of those will be at the manager level, and those shifts will be throughout the 24 hours to support the operations. The flex drivers will now be able to load interior and exterior to the site. I'll defer to our engineers to get into the specific details on the technical side of that. But just we're going to be reconfiguring the interior van parking to allow for the loadout inside the space. And I think that's kind of it operationally.
Yeah, can you I think you spoke about the number of employees. And I guess my only question would be regarding public access and parking on the site.
Yes. Okay. So apologies. The existing approval allowed for an Amazon hub, which was intended to allow customers to come and pick up packages directly at the facility. That function has not been operating for some time. It's no longer part of the protocol at the delivery station, and it will no longer be incorporated as part of these changes either.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness?
There's no more retail at this location anymore?
No.
Mika?
Ms. Rusty, just to clarify, you said there would be 150 to, well, they were 150, there'll be 180 associates.
Yes.
How many associates would be at the maximum, like the most peak shift at the shop?
Of roughly 68.
68. And during the last approval of this application, we were, I believe, provided something called Amazon Logistics Report, which explained that we would have something to about 200 delivery service partners, 45 flex employees, and 60 associates and 20 managers on site. Now, you've said 68 associates. I'm counting that. What has changed between the delivery service partners and the flex? How many would you be expecting?
So the delivery service partners are the flex drivers are also delivery partners. The delivery service partner is the terminology that we use specifically for the small businesses that operate the Amazon branded vans. Okay. So those will no longer be, that's going down to 0.
Okay.
The flex drivers are, which was only 45, is now closer to at max capacity, which will take us time to ramp up to. We certainly don't anticipate this day one, but at max capacity will be approximately 1,300 flex drivers.
Thank you. And also, I believe there was at least parking spaces for 341 vans on site. So those vans will be on site, right?
And there will no longer be like we had van overnight parking because the flex drivers are using their personal vehicles. It's just they come in once, get the packages and leave, so they don't have a need to actually park there just for loading. The only parking will be associates.
Okay. The other operation-wise question, you did mention that the Amazon hub is no longer going to be there. I forget how many square feet that area was. Is that just going to get converted into an office space, or what would that space be used as?
So it will be, I don't know specifically on the floor plan, but it will just be retrofitted to there will be some interior work proposed going through the building department that'll be incorporated there. I don't know specifically what the use will be.
Okay. As long as it's just being incorporated into the same number of employees and the same number of...
Yes.
Okay. think the other questions I'll wait for the engineer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions from the board?
Yes. I know you've been before the Environmental Commission, is that correct?
Yes.
And they had made some recommendations toward greening of the site, and asked you to look into the charging stations. And also, I think they were looking at the solar. Is that correct, Karen?
Yeah, we talked about doing any green attributes, adding that to the building, LED lighting, and making it the charging stations. I guess we had a few questions about that because the engineer at the time, or whoever came to the Environmental Commission, wasn't sure if this plan was going to incorporate EV charging stations or make ready spots.
So it will, but I'll defer to the civil engineer to address that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
At this time, I'd like to call Brian Hall, our civil engineer.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your full name and spell your last name, please.
My name's Brian Hall, last name Hall.
Brian, can you please provide the board with your education, area of expertise, licenses you hold, and any planning or zoning boards that you have appeared before?
Sure. Yeah, I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte in 2001. I worked duration of time and received my PE in New Jersey. I spent 17 years in New Jersey representing land use and zoning boards, planning boards and zoning boards. Also testifying in front of these boards. I've since moved to Ohio, received my license in Ohio also. With that, I've also received a Maryland license too. I've been practicing. I've been in the civil engineering realm for about 25 years.
I'll accept his credentials. Any objection? Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you. If the board would like, we could introduce our exhibits in the beginning and have them marked.
Whatever's more comfortable for you with your presentation.
Sure.
I'll mark them.
We'll mark them now, then we can just go through.
Yeah, they take.
This first display is the overall site plan, sheet 4 of 9. I'll just mark it as A1. The other sheets I will mark as we go through if we're needed. I plan on doing most of my presentation off this one board, so if we need to, I'll add the extra ones. But as Mr. Singer had indicated, this is tax map number 11, block 8, lot 8.5. It is in the HD Highway Development Zone. We are requesting amended preliminary and final site plan approval. The existing site is 63.69 acres, is currently developed as the previous application. The warehouse distribution of Amazon last mile delivery station. There are 2 full access points along Farrington on the east and the west side of the building. The existing building, the total square footage right now is 301,320 square feet. It will remain as is, no additional square footage is proposed. Our plans will be revised to indicate that. That was just a typo on my staff's. I apologize for the confusion. With that, inside there will be 9,104 square feet of office space, 292,216 square feet of warehouse space, which again is no change from the previous. And to answer the planner's question about the hub square footage, that's just going to be, that was originally part of the office area square footage. So it's just going to be reconfigured internally with the building applications. The existing lot coverage will remain as 26.5%. Through my previous testimony on this application, it was originally 28.1%, but due to discussions with the board last time, we removed some parking spaces on the west lot, added a parking or landscaped island in the western lot too, so that reduced our impervious coverage from 28.1 to 26.5%. With this overall application, there will be no changes to the grading, drainage, utilities, or landscaping that was previously approved under the previous application, PB 123120. The changes that are proposed are primarily to the northern section just behind the building in the existing pavement, and some slight striping modifications to the eastern parking area. We're going to lose 6 parking spaces over there, and for better pedestrian circulation, adding some crosswalks and more pedestrian refuge in the parking area. The rear area will be just restriped to include those flex parking spaces that Ms. Aristi had indicated, and some additional loading spaces. We are also going to because of the reconfiguration of the rear area, we'll be relocating some site lights, and we'll indicate which ones are being relocated and which ones being proposed new. Along with this, there will be some additional fencing, or not additional fencing, I'm sorry, some relocation of existing fencing. And the fencing that will be proposed is to match the existing that was originally approved. There are also 2 additional pedestrian ramps. We had indicated them as dockzillas. And those are between the proposed parking spaces and the rear of the building. And they will function as pedestrian ramps for loading and unloading of loading of the cars. The drivers will go up the ramps, grab their carts that they need, push the carts down the ramp. So no vehicular traffic will be on those ramps. The reason for that is there's a differential in grade between the first floor elevation and the parking lot of about 4 feet. Another addition to the site is an emergency generator. The emergency generator is between those dockzilla ramps that I had indicated and the existing drive-in ramp that is already there. Also, we're adding on 4 additional loading docks to be a total of 16 loading docks, 2 of which will be reserved for the waste management, the auger, and the compactor that Ms. Aristi had indicated. We're also adding some directional signage due to the new configuration of the circulation of the lot and the removal of 81 internal parking spaces. Originally, we had some internal parking spaces in this upper northwestern corner. And originally the vehicles went through the building. There was parking spaces internal in the northwest building, northwest corner of the building. There was also delivery vans that went through the building, which loaded and pre-staged during the operations. Now, since this is all going to that flex facility, those parking spaces internal are no longer needed. So they're going to convert that area into loading spaces consistent with the flex spaces. So there'll be flex spaces outside and flex spaces on the inside. So just the elimination of those 81 parking spaces. With that,
I'm sorry. So those will be 81 car parking spaces now?
no, there'll be 54 loading spaces for the flex vehicles.
Which are regular car sizes,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there'll be 54, 10 by 20.
There'll be 10, yeah, there'll be 10 by 20 loading spaces, and we have not put them into our parking count because we're not counting them as parking spaces.
Thank you.
So how will they, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, how would those spaces function and how are you loading them?
So there'll be internal loading from the facility. The vehicles will go up the existing ramp, find the parking spaces internal, load, and then once they're loaded, they can circulate through and leave through the existing door that's there.
The vehicles will use that ramp.
The vehicles will use the existing ramp, yes, not the Dockzilla ramps. The two Dockzilla ramps are in this two locations here, and the existing ramp is in that location there.
Was the ramp being utilized when those were parking stalls?
Yes.
Thank you.
So with the changes in the parking striping, we're proposing now a total of 450 exterior spaces. Previously, we had 660 spaces, which included the 81 parking spaces interior. The remaining parking spaces, just to put the math together, is 287 existing 11 by 27 spaces, which were originally for those vans. 172 of the spaces will be 10 by 20. Of those 172, 118 are existing, and then the 54 proposed on the outside. The new parking spaces on the rear are 24 feet from the building. Originally, we got a variance previously for 18 feet. So we're currently going to remain, that variance is going to remain since the permitted distance from the building is 30 feet. The applicant will comply with the township's EV requirements. I believe it's 19 spaces, so we will add them. The final area has not been determined where they will be, so, but we will get them marked and put them on our plan for the revised submission. No landscapes are proposed, I'm sorry, no landscape islands are proposed in the rear due to the functionality of moving the carts through the parking area to allow for the vehicle attendants to load their vehicles. It's also consistent with our previous approval from Planning Board, or PB 1192-17. As far as loading spaces, we are now proposing 16 loading spaces, 2 of which will be reserved for the waste removal. So I'll leave it to the professionals to determine whether or not you want to count the 2 waste management sites as loading docks, because they can be easily converted back and forth. For this intended application, it will be 14 loading docks and 2 waste disposal docks. And if you consider us with the required 16 spaces and only providing 14, we already have a variance for the 12, for providing 12 from the last application, so we'll just keep that variance in.
Yeah, I would recommend that as a variance because again, if the compactor and auger is supposed to stay in the loading area, it's not really being used as a loading dock.
Correct.
So, your variance has not been exasperated. You're actually increasing, going towards meeting it, but it's still a variance.
And with that, we also have one design waiver that Mr. Singer had indicated, and that is to allow wheel stops in the rear, in this rear parking area. And that is more for a site safety concern. The vehicles will be backing into their parking spaces to enable to load their trunks and the doors, and we don't want to have the vehicles be incumbent on the walking area between the parking spaces. And that would be a design waiver for section 108-12.8.A.1 to allow wheel stops. We're also asking for 2 bulk variances.
Before we move on to lighting, could you just confirm that none of the parking that we're talking about changes will exacerbate any of the existing variances that were previously granted?
Correct.
Mr. Singh, if I may, I just want to clarify the number of parking spaces that's being provided, because we've heard 450, 456, and then 287 plus 172 comes out to be 459. So I just want to make sure, unless I have the math wrong. I just want to make sure we have, because that will then determine your EV calculation.
Maybe I misspoke. It was 278
Okay.
and 172. I apologize for that. And yeah, it is 450.
Okay.
It was a mishap with us. We neglected to count the changes in the eastern parking lot in our parking count originally.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then we have 2 bulk variances that we're requesting. One for exceeding the maximum average lighting level of 0.5 foot candles to increase it to 7.5 foot candles. And that was that area of exceedance. Well, it was previously approved to be 4.5 throughout the site. And in this area, due to the pedestrian use of this flex parking area, we're requesting to increase that to 7.5 for site safety and security concerns. That would be for section 108-9.1.A12. The other bulk variance would be for on-site non-illuminated signs, directional signs. The ordinance requires that they not exceed 3 square feet. We are requesting a few signs to exceed to exceed the 3 square feet up to a maximum of 20 square feet. And that would be for section 108-10.1 F1. And most of those signs would be, we're considering directional signs. I know we can go back and forth on that and go through, but most of them are wayfinding signs for the drivers and the associates entering the site to make sure that they are going in the correct direction. On one of your comments too, we had a couple signs in the front of the site proposed. What we're going to do is reface the existing monument signs to incorporate those signs. So those signs that were at the curb link at the front of the site will no longer be there.
I think the concern was from there because those 2 areas where you were pointing were the 20 square foot signs.
Yeah.
And they were just the tenant name and logo, which is what the freestanding sign was doing.
Yes.
So that's why I recommended those are not directional signs.
Okay.
And if they are being removed and, so the monument sign that was already approved and actually existing there is the only sign that's going to be.
Correct. That will be refaced. No additional square footage to be refaced.
Okay. So then does your directional sign number go down from 19 to?
It goes down to 16. Due to the circulation, Amazon has indicated that they want a couple extra of those wayfinding signs on the eastern side of the portion. So we'll be moving a couple of them that were existing along the roadway to the internal side. So really in the signage summary, the AS1 signs, there were 4 of them.
Yeah.
We'll be removing them from our signage summary. And there were 7 AS16s, which were the large wayfinding signs. We're going to remove 3, but add 4. So we're going to be up to 8 on them internally.
I would really recommend you provide us with a final, basically a signage plan or something to that effect,
Yeah.
just to keep track of.
We
what's
will
being-
revise the sign plan that was previously submitted,
Yeah.
and we'll indicate which signs there are.
And I would recommend you indicate on that also, the existing signs, which are the two freestanding signs as well
Yes.
as the wall signs
Yep,
that are.
yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
And then with respect to outside agency approvals, we've received Middlesex County Planning Board approval. We received a letter yesterday on February 22nd, 2023. Freehold Soil Conservation District, we received a letter of exemption on 1/10/2023. And the DRCC, we've received a jurisdictional determination stating that the proposed activities are exempt from review. And that was dated February 1st, 2023. That wraps up my testimony.
Brian, I have a couple questions. I know that town planner had asked for some details related to the auger and compactor.
Yes, I do have a handout for that.
As well as the Doxzilla.
Yep. This handout I'll indicate as Exhibit A2.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll explain the handout a little bit. On the first page, you will see the dumpsters and the auger. The auger is on the right side, and the compactor and the auger. The auger is on the right side, the compactor is on the left side. They're not much different than a typical dumpster that you see on an industrial building. They get hooked up to a truck, they haul it away, and they drop another dumpster in its place. And the next few pages are just a little bit closer up views of them with a cut sheet of it, of the auger. And then midway through is the pictures of the Doxzilla, which I'll also go into also. I just want to give the board a chance to look at it, and if you have any questions with the auger and the compactor. And then about midway through, there's also some, on the back end of this exhibit, there are the Doxzilla photos. One thing I forgot to mention is the Doxzilla ramps will have a canopy above them, just for weather protection of at the entry.
And this would be permanent canopy, or is it
The canopy would be permanent, yes.
metal canopy or fabric? Or?
It's a shed style canopy, metal.
And if you can, to the extent not addressed in your prior testimony, I want to turn to the engineering memo dated February 21st, 2023. One, I just want to clarify that the requests for site plan revisions that are in the engineering memo will be made.
Yes, we'll conform to all those comments as far as the signature block and the application on the title block.
And to the extent required by the board, a circulation plan would be provided as a condition of approval?
Correct, yes, we will supply one.
Lastly, in terms of, there was a question regarding were there changes to the buffer. I want you to, if you could just confirm there'll be no changes to the buffers previously approved.
Correct, there are no changes.
And then I know you were going to discuss the outside agency approvals.
I just did.
Chairman?
Yeah.
So With the exception of the traffic, because you have a traffic
Right.
engineer getting up, you're agreeing to all the items in the review letter, correct?
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
That is correct.
So let me just clarify the site lighting. So the existing facility has a punch list where some of the as-built site lighting didn't get installed in accordance with the plan. So are you now incorporating those changes into this plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There was, I believe it was this light and I think there was a light up there that were not installed in the original submission of the last application's location. They had been changed and yeah, they
So
will
you-
be indicated as being relocated.
Okay.
That way it clears all the confusion.
Thanks. And the area of the outside loading now behind the building, is there adequate lighting now being provided to handle that? Because you're putting canopies up. You're going to have essentially the public back there with their own personal vehicles getting loaded. How are the lighting levels back there?
In this area, we have multiple site lights, and this area is the 7.5 foot candle area that we're requesting additional relief from. So that will be significantly lit. The canopies, there'll be building mounted lights under that, I believe. So that area will be lit too.
So those ramps, Dockzilla ramps, will be adequately lit underneath there. Thanks. And the rest I'll save for the traffic engineer.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one follow-up question. Mr. Hall, if you could tell us a little bit, I know you touched upon the fencing, but what about the pedestrian barrier fencing that's being proposed? Is that, would we get details of that, and is that the same kind? Is it chain link fence, or what are we
It
proposing?
is still chain link fence. It's the black cladded chain link fence, PVC coated. It is the same fence that was originally approved. It's just being relocated, and we'll add that detail to this plan set. That way there's no question about it. It'll be the same detail that was provided in the last application.
And those pedestrian barrier fencing is for the flex drivers, right? I mean, who'll be walking? I mean, I thought they're loading at the back, and there is no public coming on the side.
Correct. It is just for errant pedestrians, just making sure they don't go into the traveled way to keep them away from where the loading vehicle, the delivery, the wide body vehicles utilizing the loading docks, just to make sure there's a separation of that aspect and the pedestrians within the flex loading area.
That's why the 19 directional signs, right?
Correct.
Then why would we have errant pedestrians walking somewhere?
Well, we want to make sure they don't go.
Okay. The other question I have is, as you point to the northeastern portion where all the parking was earlier, that's being removed now, is that area just going to remain asphalt? Like, what is the purpose of that? Is that the turning radius that's needed for these trucks that are coming to the site? Since all the parking is being removed, why is that area being kept as asphalt?
For flexibility for future operation changes, possibly. We're not in a coverage variance concern, so this pavement area was originally approved, and we're going to we want to maintain that for future.
So there's a possibility of that going back to parking spaces, maybe in future. Thank you.
I won't say there's a possibility, but we just want to keep flexibility.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to add to that, as of this application, you're not proposing any type of storage back in that area.
Correct. No,
Okay.
no. That will it'll remain as pavement, but it will not be utilized.
And
in this.
and it will not be tractor trailer parking or any kind of
No,
overnight parking.
Yeah, no, tractor trailers will not be permitted on the eastern side of the site. Tractor trailers will only be routed from the western access in and out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have two things. Number one, this is going to be a very high in and out traffic situation. Consequently, what are you doing to prevent idling with the vehicles? What are the rules?
Go ahead.
So it's Amazon's policy.
Hold up, quick.
Apologies. It's Amazon's policy for all vehicles that are on site, whether it be tractor trailers, the vans, or the flex drivers. For safety purposes, when you arrive on site, you have to shut off your vehicle.
Okay, thank you. The other question is I looked all through all these maps and I didn't see one thing that had a tree on it. I didn't see a landscaping plan.
Correct. So the landscaping plan was originally approved with the application back in 2017. It was a planning board resolution 1192-17.
That since you're not showing it in this, and this is what we're acting on, it should be submitted to the planning department because it's part of this package.
Well, this is the amendment to the site plan. So that original site plan is still holding true. We're not changing that information at all. So all we submitted were the plans that changed.
No, there's a major change we're making, and I just think that should have the opportunity to see the plan.
Maybe I can clear this up for you. We're not adding any pavement. We're not changing any landscaping.
Yeah, but I didn't see the original landscaping, and I'm tough on it. So that's my concern. I don't know what's there, and you didn't transfer it over to these maps. So I'm looking at just a desert.
Yeah, we can easily add that to the plan set for the next submission, though. But I was just explaining why we didn't include it with our plan, because it was not being amended.
All right.
Any other questions from the board?
Can I just ask you where the 19 EV spaces will be?
Don't know yet. Do we know?
With part of the submittal that'll come back to you, the location will be identified, but it will have to be within the customer. I'm sorry, not the customer. There are no customers coming to the site. Within the associate parking spaces, because the flex drivers are not parking. They're just stopping for about 15 minutes to load their vehicles. So not sure that it would be efficient use of the chargers, but that way we would provide them for our employees.
And where is that parking? Is that on the side?
The associate parking is here on the east side. And there is a provision for a number of handicap spaces to be EV charging also, so those will be implemented into this plan too. I just don't know which exact spaces will be EV prepped or EV.
Yeah, I was just wondering if any of the flex vehicles had an opportunity to use the charging stations. Not, in the event that they come with a car that needs charging. Not that they should, I guess, but
we can look into that.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
You could tell the board where we are with outside agency approvals.
Oh. So we received approval from Middlesex County Planning Board, Freehold Soil Conservation District, and the DRCC. Both the DRCC and the Soil Conservation District, we received letters of exemption.
Are there any further questions for this witness?
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to call our final witness, last but not least, Mr. Alan Lothian.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your full name and spell your last name, please.
Alan Lothian, Lothian.
Alan, could you please provide the board with your education, licenses, area of expertise, and if you've appeared before other planning and zoning boards.
Sure. I've been with Langen for over 24 years now. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers. I have a Master's of Science in Transportation from NJIT. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've testified before dozens of boards, and I had the pleasure of being before this board for the previous amended approval.
Thank you. Accepted.
Thank you.
You've reviewed the amended site plan and have conducted a traffic impact study, is that correct?
Yes, we have.
Can you discuss the results of your traffic impact study?
Okay. First, I'm going to hit on something that was discussed in the operational testimony, and you heard a number. It was the potential for up to approximately 1,300 flex drivers during the course of a day. That's a little bit different than the delivery station operations that happen today, where there's the vans. The reason for that is a lot more packages fit in a van than they do in a personal vehicle. One of the biggest differences is there's a lot wider array of time that the operations are occurring. So just to give you more of an apples to apples comparison of what happens during the course of an hour, the highest amount of vans entering or exiting the facility in a peak hour was 120. So what that entailed was 120 van drivers coming in their personal vehicles, parking on site, getting in a van, going to the staging area, going to the loading area, and then leaving the site. So during the course of any 1 hour in the day, which was typically late morning, there was 120 vehicles, which equated to about 240 trips. The max number of flex drivers anticipated is 130 in any given hour. So that's only 10 more vehicles in any given hour. And that's a flex driver coming in their personal vehicle to the site, going directly to a loading area, and then exiting the site. So it sounds like a big number, but in the grand scheme of things, when you look at individual hours, and that's how we look at things in our operational analysis, it's not that significant a number. I mean, there's passenger cars that will likely be on the roads somewhere in the area. Those are the people that are delivering these packages now. They're getting notification. They're going to the site, picking up the package, and then it's more of a sniper shot rather than the vans. The vans, they go, they have routes, they deliver to different locations. They're coming, they're getting a package, or they could get multiple packages, but they're going to a specific location. They're going right to that spot so that people can get their packages in a more efficient way, as was testified to before, but possibly even same day. A lot of the activity and the majority of the activity for these flex drivers occurred during the early morning peak hours. You heard testimony starts at 4 a.m. So when you wake up, you might have a package on your front stoop. 4 a.m. is when those 130 vehicles would be coming in. So 4 a.m. to like 8 a.m. that's when the bulk of the activity is occurring, and then it dissipates as you get further through the day, and it's lesser during the PM peak hour. It's almost half of what it is in the morning. So I just wanted to provide that clarity so that everyone's aware, because it is a big number. But when you look at how it occurs throughout the day, it's not as ominous. So we did do a traffic impact study. We did it consistent with how the original study was done when it was approved as a fulfillment center. And then as we did for the amended approval 2 years ago now, we looked at the same scope of area, and we looked at what developments would be open and occupied by the time we changed the operations of the site. Because really, that's all it comes down to. It's still a delivery station. It will continue to be a delivery station. It's just a change in the internal operations and how it functions. And that could be changed within the matter of months as opposed to years, which it would take to build the facility and then occupy it and operate it. So I just wanted to lay that out. Our analysis did show that there is no significant impact on the study intersections during the AM and the PM peak hours. We are slightly more trips when compared to the original approved fulfillment center in the morning, significantly less trips during the evening time period, again, compared to what was originally approved as the fulfillment center. And that fulfillment center included a lot more trucks. So that being said, I wanted to keep that part short, and I wanted to address some of the engineering comments that were in the report. There was mention of the amount of trucks per day. So the important thing is there's significantly less trucks than if it was occupied as the fulfillment center before. The amount of trucks anticipated for this particular facility is 14 during the course of the day. It's 28 total trips. So 14 trucks in, 14 trucks out, really no more than one in any given hour throughout the day. The way we looked at it previously, or the way we're looking at it is from, let's say, the daylight hours, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., we're anticipating 6 trucks during that time period. Previously, with the previous operations of the delivery station, it was 3 during that time period. So we're doubling it, but we're doubling it from 3 to 6 during the course of that time frame, that 10-hour time frame. The hours from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m., now we're anticipating 8, whereas before it was anticipated to be 12 trucks. So we're overall during the course of the day, we're reducing it by 1 truck. We're having a few more during the course of the day, and that's because the operations have shifted so that there is more activity through the course of the day. So more packages have to come to the site to keep the flex drivers active later in the day. So that's why there's a slightly more truck activity during the middle of the day. We still don't anticipate any real truck activity during the peak hours. That hasn't changed. Again, at most, we're anticipating 1 truck trip during an hour. It may be 1 to 2, but that's all we're looking at. So that I think was one comment. There was a question as to whether we included any other approved developments. So any of the other approved developments in the area are years off from being occupied. We included the Scannell building that's immediately to the south of us in Riverside Center. We included that one as a background development. We also included background growth as per what DOT expects for the course of 2 years. So we grew it to 2024. And I understand the reasoning why this question is being asked. There is a lot of sensitivity with respect to the Farrington and Prineville intersection, and the fact that there is a desire for that to be signalized. And as part of prior approvals, there is a condition that the property owner has to provide yearly updates and yearly analysis to determine whether a signal is warranted at that location. We did provide in our traffic study a signal warrant that included multiple hours throughout the day, and the signal is not currently warranted. It's not warranted with the change in operations, even with the shift of delivery operations. Before, there was only 25% going to Prineville. Now there's 40% of the delivery operations going out to Prineville. The reason for that is before we were talking in towns. We were talking Spotswood to the north, Cranberry to the west, 33 corridor to the south, and then Freehold to the east. That was the delivery service area for the current delivery station. Now, what this new operation allows for is an expanded delivery service area which incorporates essentially what I'll call Central Jersey. I mean, it's Middlesex, Monmouth, Ocean, Mercer, Hunterdon, all the Central Jersey counties. So now we're talking in counties as opposed to municipalities as the extents of the service area. So these flex drivers can go further. And again, because they're not on specific routes, and they don't have time limits of when they have to return to the station, they can go to wherever they need to go, and then they don't ever have to come back to the facility. So even with that shift of 25% to 40% out to Prineville, it still does not meet the warrants. We did do, there was a comment, did we include all approved developments? And we did a sensitivity analysis over the last couple of days since we received the comment letter that showed that even with all 9 approved developments in the area, which some of them are, again, years off, with the background growth, with our modified operations, it still would not meet peak hour warrant. It wouldn't meet peak hour warrants. It wouldn't meet 4-hour warrants. It wouldn't meet 8-hour warrants. And we can provide that information. Should you act favorably on this, we could provide that as a condition of approval to the engineer. We could work with Mr. Razumowitz to get to that, get him comfortable with the fact that that's the case. And with the understanding that there is still that underlying condition out there that the property owner has to, on a yearly basis, identify whether a signal is warranted at that location, and if it is, then it is their responsibility to construct that improvement. Trying to think if there were any other direct comments that I didn't address. I don't believe there are. So that would conclude my direct, and I'm open to any questions at all.
Chairman, thanks. Who is the owner of the property?
Currently, I believe it was Black Creek. I believe it's now Aries.
So prior approvals indicated applicant and/or owner. Just to be clear.
That was the previous. Okay, so that was part of the previous resolution for the amended site plan approvals.
So is Amazon the owner?
So under the previous approval, actually paragraph 24 of the prior, the approval 1231-20, the owner entered into a developer's agreement as required, and they have been submitting as recently as
last summer, the annual reports as required under the developer's agreement as part of the resolution compliance within the prior approval. So it is anticipated that the owner will continue as they have been doing under this developer's agreement to comply with that prior condition. That condition doesn't change, it continues. So there's an agreement, separate agreement, developer's agreement with the town, and it will continue.
So you're agreeing that those prior conditions will carry over to this application?
Yes.
Thanks. With regard to Middlesex County, did you indicate you had their approval or their sign-off?
The county did sign off on the application, yes.
So going to your traffic study and the adjacent approvals across the street, you have Marketplace at Monroe that's under construction. It started construction there. And there's modifications coming to Prineville Road, which is a county road. My concern, without providing an updated traffic study, as you agreed to provide, I'd like that to be seen by the county as well. I don't know if they didn't look at that intersection based on your traffic generation, or they just looked at your current traffic report and indicated there wasn't any impact. But if we're going to do I would recommend that you provide that updated traffic report. And it be provided to the county for their review.
Okay. Well, what I said, we were going to provide the update. We did a updated signal warrant analysis at that intersection.
With the including the approved development across the street.
Yeah, including 9 approved developments in the area, which also includes Marketplace.
Okay. And so did you take into account the proposed improvements for that road that the county has approved under the marketplace development?
I don't believe there's any improvements at the intersection of Prineville and Farrington.
Not at the intersection, but there is another traffic signal coming on that road, and there's some driveway access points provided on that road onto Prineville Road as well.
Yeah, to the north and the south of
Correct.
Farrington. And our study location was the intersection of Farrington and Prineville. And we added the traffic associated with the other developments on top of that.
And that's the report that you will provide?
Yes.
Because the current report does not have that, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see. And just one thing about the trips for the flex driver, and I may have misheard you, but you indicated, yes, it's a lot of vehicles coming in and out, but many of those vehicles are already on the road, even if they weren't here, coming here.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means? Because if my interpretation of a flex driver, they're coming to your facility to get the package so they can go deliver it. They're not just driving around on Prineville Road.
No. Okay, so it's not exactly. It's similar. It's similar to when you put in a shopping center. There are people that are on the road already today that will eventually visit that shopping center. It's a similar type of operation. So again, they get the notification that there's packages to pick up as part of their app, I would say, and then they get that call. And then they travel to the site, pick up the package, and then go to wherever the destination is. So in theory, they could already be on the road already to a different destination. That's what I meant. That it's vehicles that are on the road at some point during the course of the day.
Drive-by traffic,
Yeah.
or is that what you're saying? Okay. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of follow-up questions. Just so I understand correctly, so your testimony was that in the earlier approval, there were 120 vans that were leaving the site during peak period. What was that peak period? Was it an hour of some time?
Yeah, that was in any peak hour. So that was in the late morning for the
That was the
vans
late morning.
for leaving the site. Yes.
And with this model, there'll be 130 vehicles for every hour, or from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m.?
No, not every hour. So it's the 1,300 are spread out during the course of an entire day. So 4 a.m. and I think it was testified to 10 p.m. So it's spread out during the entire day. The most condensed time is the early morning peak hours. So from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's when there could be up to 130 vehicles in any 1 hour. As you get past that, then that number drops throughout the day.
Okay. Sorry, I understood it as 130 vehicles per hour, but thanks, that clarifies that. The other question I have is, it ramps up to 1,300. Now, does that take into account the peak season, the holiday season? Will that number of drivers increase? Because during the last time we were told that, the flex drivers may increase during the holiday period. And did the traffic study kind of take that into account?
So before, it wasn't the flex drivers that changed, it was the number of vans. So before, there was a peak season time period that we did analyze and we showed in the previous application. So the number of vans increased, not the number of flex drivers. This type of operation is not anticipated to change throughout the year. So the 1,300, that would be the absolute max that this facility could generate during the course of any day. So there's not going to be that fluctuation. If anything, it will be less during any other time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question about that. Aren't more packages delivered during the holiday season? So wouldn't the flex drivers make more than trips during the holiday season than the normal time of the year?
What
That would increase the traffic.
So with respect, what I was saying was that the 1,300 approximately is the max.
It's the same number of people, of drivers, but it's more trips. Each driver only does one trip a day.
No, that's the same. It's the same number of flex drivers coming to the site. So a flex driver can come to the site multiple times during the course of a day, if they wanted to, but they're counted each time. So
That's what I'm saying. During holiday season, they're going to make 3 trips to the site instead of 2.
yeah, but that would still be incorporated in that 1,300. So it's not like it's going from 1,300 flex drivers
I'm
to.
not talking about the number of drivers. I'm talking about the number of the cars that go in and out of the site. It doesn't matter how many drivers. It matters how many times cars go in and out of there, right?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, let me try to help this out. So during the normal operation, it's 1,300 packages that are getting delivered. Is that,
No,
is that
it's
fair to
13.
say?
No, well, it's 1,300
Drivers,
flex drivers throughout the day.
But some of those, okay, so 1,300 different drivers. So I guess the question is, with the number of trips that are coming in, those drivers are going to make. If every driver did one in a day, you'd have 1,300 packages delivered.
Yes.
So what is the normal day then?
That's what I was saying. Well, the max would be 1,300 drivers coming in and out of the site.
And some of them could be the same driver who came back 2 or 3 times.
Exactly.
Okay.
The same person can come back 5 times. if
So
they
in the
want.
peak season is what the member is asking. In the peak season of Christmas, the holidays, I think we would all think there's going to be more packages that have to leave Amazon to get delivered to people's homes. So how much higher does that 1,300 go?
It doesn't go any. The approximately 1,300 is the highest threshold, so it wouldn't be any higher than the 1,300.
And how can you say that? What limits that?
So Amazon limits 1,300 drivers, and then you stop.
No, that's so the facility and the operations within the building. That's what it can handle.
So in the course of a day, the maximum number of packages that Amazon can load is 1,300?
No, not packages. The
But
amount
doesn't
of
packages,
flex drivers.
Doesn't packages mean trips?
No, a flex driver can have multiple packages. So one flex driver can have multiple packages in their vehicle.
So at the holiday season, there's no increase in the amount of output coming out of Amazon? Is that what you're saying?
There's not an increase in the amount of vehicles coming in and out of the site.
Okay.
Not sure why I'm missing it.
The max you can handle is 1,300 drivers a day. No matter how many packages have to go out from that facility, you can only handle 1,300 drivers a day at that facility.
Based on the size of the facility.
Microphone.
That's what I didn't understand.
Based on the size of the facility and the delivery times that we work with flex drivers, that's the max that we can get out of this facility. And where some of that differentiation is when we talk about peak is we're already, with the flex drivers, we're maximizing the site's capacity at that number. Where with the vans, they were limited to a smaller dispatch. So we had an opportunity to add different dispatch times during holiday peak season, which increased the amount of packages we were able to get out of a site. But with the flex model, we're already maximizing the delivery distribution time out of the facility.
But I don't think so. The question is the number of drivers on site. We got that 1,300. I think the question was the amount of trips they will be doing back and forth from the site and how that will increase in holiday season time. Like the same driver who gets the call at 4 a.m. to come pick up packages. He or she does his delivery by 8:39, and then gets another call to come back and again deliver, and then again at 2 o'clock. Like that's I think
They'd be incorporated in that 1,300 vehicles. So they would count as a new vehicle every time they come to the site to pick up packages.
So one person could take up 10 of the 1,300 vehicles, and then the rest of the people will only have 1,290.
Correct.
That's what you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
It's not. See, the way it sounds is you have 1,300 drivers coming in and out of there. It's 1,300 deliveries you have is what you're doing. You're having 1,300 deliveries a day out of there, not drivers. Sorry about that. I just had to clear that up.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. So why doesn't it increase at the holiday season?
Because it's already, so again, the way it's analyzed, honestly, I don't anticipate there ever to be 1,300 vehicles coming in and out of here. But that's what we analyzed the maximum possible. So that would account for any holiday season, Prime Day, that type of operation. During any other time period, it could be a slower day. There could be only 500 flex drivers that come out of there a day. So we looked at the absolute max.
So that's the holiday season. That's the 1,300.
But we didn't. They don't look at it that way. They look at it as, this is our capacity.
Okay.
Question? I had a question. You were saying in your business model that the old business model, you would have a truck come in or driver come in, park their car, get in the truck, use that truck to make deliveries. But that's only one driver. In the new model, you could have more drivers in a lot. You're saying you're counting the driver and the truck as two separate entities, right?
Yeah, it's four trips per van. So the driver has to come to the site, park,
get the truck,
load, leave,
unload.
bring the truck back.
But that's
park.
One driver making those.
Yeah,
four separate.
Yes, but
versus you could have four separate drivers all in at the same time, which would increase the amount of congestion and more density of cars in the lot at a time. No.
No, because like I was saying before, the peak vans coming in, so you would have a car coming in and vans going out. That would be 100. That would be 120. So you have 120 people coming in to get vans, 120 vans leaving in that hour time period. Now you have 130 at most passenger cars coming in and then going out. There's not that internal getting in the car, going into the staging area, loading area. So it's during the peak time of the day. It's essentially the same amount of delivery vehicles, but one's passenger cars, one's vans.
Okay. Still a little confusing to me.
Is there a particular size of car? Can somebody come with a Mini and then the next person come with a van to deliver their packages? I mean, is there a minimum size of the vehicle and how many packages the person?
No, I assume it's however much their vehicle can handle. I'm sure there's no minimum size of vehicle. I mean, you can come on a motorcycle and deliver a package if you want. Oh no? Well, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry about that.
But somebody showing up in a Mini Cooper
that.
can't handle as many packages as somebody showing up in an SUV. Right. So there's no minimum requirement.
When they sign up for the app, they can go on and look for a route or a block of time that they're available to deliver, and then they would indicate what vehicle they're coming in and then pick up the route, and that route would be the right size for what they're coming in.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, not to keep going on this. So your peak hour is 130. Flex drivers.
Yes.
So that means in that peak hour, the facility can handle 130 flex drivers, correct?
Yeah.
So what's stopping the facility from handling 130 flex drivers from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. every hour?
That's not how the site's anticipated the operation.
That's more than
130 times 16.
It's not operationally designed for more than 1,300 per day.
But what will stop it? I mean,
The
thing
design
is-
of the operation, it just,
It's designed for 1,300.
that's correct. It's designed for 1,300.
But if during peak you're bringing 130 vehicles on site, the 4 to 8 a.m. peak time, that can go on every hour till 10 o'clock.
Again, it's a function of how the site internally operates and bringing in the packages and distributing packages throughout the day. So
Frankly, I'm confused, so. Apologize.
Is it based on the timing, like how long it takes for the flex driver to come in, load the merchandise? Like, is that the timing factor? I'm sorry, I'm just like.
well, that's the timing factor for the maximum number of flex drivers in those early morning hours. Yeah.
Can the facility accommodate 130 drivers an hour? If 130 drivers show up every hour for 18 hours, that's when you're delivering.
60.
Can the facility handle that? 2,300 drivers in the course of the day.
From the planning and the way it's been designed to operate, that's not how it's been planned. And it could be because the overnight shift, the earlier morning shift is when we're able to get the most packages out. So it's a little bit quieter in the overnight and you're able to sort and get those packages ready for that early morning shift to kind of ramp up for when they come in. And then during the daytime, you're doing two operations, right? You're sorting packages and preparing them for routes as drivers are still coming in and dispatching. So you're not able to have as much focus on just the sorting and prepping the routes. And that's why that morning hour has the most, or the morning window has the most packages going out.
So going back to the holiday season, do you see does Amazon experience an increase in the number of packages going out of their facility during the holiday? I mean,
So typically, Amazon sees an increase in packages during holiday or during our Prime Day, right? But the way that the analysis and the operations were designed was to take the most conservative approach of how much this site can be designed to handle. So it may be that 1,300 is at during those peak time periods, and we see less prior to that, or not during those peak time periods. But that's the maximum that we're designed to handle from this site.
So if you start at 4 a.m. with whatever 130 an hour, and you reach that max at, let's say 6 p.m., do you shut down, or what do you do once you hit your quota? Well, not quota, but your max.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Well, you're saying you have a maximum number. Is it 1,300?
Deliveries.
Deliveries. What if you hit that? You know, you're open 4 to 10. What if you hit that at 6 o'clock? So do you shut down the 6 to 10? Is the
No, I would say no, but these are it's a model that is estimated based on how other sites function, right? And estimated based on the delivery network around us to get packages in, the process of the under the roof operations of folks getting these packages sorted and staged. And so that overnight hour where we're not dispatching, we're just focused on getting sortation and staging done for the routes allows us to have the maximum amount of packages in that early morning time period. But if you see it, if you look at the report, it decreases throughout the day because then we have two operations going on under the roof, which is the sortation, staging, and dispatching. 68.
So if I understand it, a driver only comes when they're dispatched. So you have a control over the dispatch. So if you can handle only 130 at a peak hour, you dispatch 130. So you try to arrange it during the day so that you have a maximum of 1,300 during the course of the day, the maximum. So you can control the drivers coming onto the site.
It's based on the customer orders and the packages that have arrived or that we know are arriving. And so if they're coming in the morning hour, then we'll set that route for the evening hour for a driver because they have to be sorted and prepared for the driver to pick up.
Chairman, I'll try one more. So currently, you would be 181 employees at the facility. How many more additional employees do you hire during the holiday season? Typically.
So typically, when we have the van model, we bring on seasonal staff. Here, we are not anticipating increasing the building's function and moving more packages out during peak. This is a more a steady state model with the flex drivers.
So you would not be taking on holiday staff in order to get more output of packages.
Not that.
So really you're limited based on the number of employees, I would think. Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Singer, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah. So just to recap, we are requesting amended site plan approval from the board, along with a variance related to the signs and a variance related to the lighting, along with a waiver with regard to the wheel stops. And those are the three variances or waivers we're requesting on this application.
And is there any members of the public that wish to be heard on this?
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your full name?
5 Kelly Court, Monroe, Gunkelman. I'm appropriately confused. There's a whole lot of special language here. Flex drivers, flex parking, Rampzilla, Dockzilla ramp. Those terms are unique to them. I don't think they mean anything to anybody else. I don't know why we have to use their language here. What I'd like to understand, and forgive me if I missed it, are the flex drivers loading inside or outside? Are these Dockzilla ramps where they take their materials out and load their cars? And what are the vehicles that drive in? I don't it's not clear what's happening here.
I'm going to show them Exhibit A2. The Dockzilla is a It's not an Amazon product. It is it's a product out there. It is a mobile ramp system. And I'll see if I can get a external view for you. And there's a ramp that the Flex drivers, they'll pull up to their parking space, walk up the ramps into the facility, grab the cart that they were assigned, bring the cart down the ramp to their vehicle and load the vehicle. So it has nothing to do with the actual vehicular traffic. It's only pedestrian traffic with their carts for loading their vehicles.
Approximately how many square foot are a Dockzilla? And this image here covers what, three or four parking spaces. The depth looks to be significant. How big is it?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I have to go back to my plans to find out, but it's set up, the distance is set up to be an appropriate slope for handling of that cart safely.
Okay, so instead of loading in the building, they're going to bring a cart out the Rampzilla.
Right.
And then they're going to load their vehicles.
Correct.
All right. So this is an activity that in the previous model, I think is the correct word, was loaded inside on the vans.
Correct. So
okay, so now you've moved an activity from inside the building to outside of the building, and you've covered it. Is that new space now part of the square footage of the building?
It's not usable.
It's not usable?
It's not usable space by definition of building space. It's not office, it's not warehouse. It is external and is for passage. It's like stairwell.
Okay, when you loaded inside the building, did you exclude that space from the square footage? Let me answer that for you. No, you didn't. You're using the space. How can you call it non-usable? You built a ramp in there for the purposes of accommodating an activity that used to be done inside the square footage of the building and moved it to the outside, covered it, and put equipment in there, which you describe as a movable ramp. And now what are you doing with the space on the inside?
Well,
Did you fence it off?
I'm going to confuse you a little more too now.
Okay.
Because there's actually loading for the flex drivers inside too. So there are 54 spaces of flex spaces inside, and there's 54 flex spaces on the outside.
Okay.
So
to have that increased in capacity, you moved outside and put it under a roof. But you consider that now to be part of the parking as part of how we,
the flex
as the township,
spaces,
view that space.
The flex spaces are not under the roof. It's just the loading dock. The ramp for weather purposes to keep the ice, the snow off of that so it stays clear and safe for the.
And the reason for doing that is so that you don't give up space inside the building. Because you're already doing the same thing inside the building, you just told me.
Correct.
So by putting this outside, you're having more space inside the building to do the same activity.
Yes.
But you don't want to consider it as part of the square footage of the building, even though you're accomplishing that by doing this.
Correct.
That doesn't seem quite right, but so be it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, may I have a follow-up question? Mr. Hall, just so I understand, following the question from the gentleman, there'll be 54, the spaces outside for loading, the 54 interior. And again, in the last model, there were going to be rows of vans that kind of came in, loaded up, and left from the site.
Correct.
Is that not happening?
That is not happening.
And what is that area going to be? Just storing of packages now?
Correct. Originally in the application, we had, in the previous amended application in
21.
we had the office space over here, and then everything else was considered warehouse space.
Yeah.
With the parking spaces interior, those 81 spaces interior, were still considered warehouse space. It's the same, it's for the most part the same split. It's going to be that office area and then the warehouse area in the back. So the function of the warehouse space is going to change. It's instead of internal parking spaces and that staging and loading area, all that will be removed. We'll add more space for sortation and I forget all the words, but for storage and sortation. And yeah, so the flex drivers will enter this area, and for the most part, this quadrant of the building will be for the flex drivers to circulate through that building.
So then the eastern, there was like an opening and everything that is going to get closed in the elevation and everything, because we don't have.
Up the solid wall. Yeah, so no vehicles will enter or exit this area over here anymore.
Chairman, we would like to see the revised floor plans. I mean, just to kind of ensure how the whole circulation interior also is happening. Because if there's a change in elevation, I know there was going to be a door there and the vehicles were going to exit and there was going to be signage and I think some kind of, I forget the word, but like bumpers and things to, to warn the vehicles coming out and all that. If that's getting removed, I think we would like to see all that.
Okay,
happening.
I believe, I'll double check, but I believe we'll provide that information.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to be heard? Hearing none, anybody move to close the public portion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, public portion is closed. Is there any other questions from the members of the Board of the Professionals?
Other than this is requesting preliminary and final also, so are we just ruling on preliminary? I think I would propose that.
Just moving on preliminary? Does anybody?
Amended.
Amended preliminary.
Okay.
Yeah, with all variants. Any particular reason why, if I may ask, why it would not be preliminary and final?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Certainly. My question was going to be, can we do only preliminary or just not vote on the whole application? You've agreed to provide updated traffic study the board has asked for. You've agreed to provide a landscaping plan that the board has asked to see. You agreed to provide the circulation plan that the board has requested. So without granting preliminary or no approval at this point, how does the board get to see that documentation?
There are conditions of approval at the end, and which is typically has been done on many applications where there's a list of conditions that we meet, and before they could go in for building plans or anything of that nature, they have to provide these documents and meet the conditions of the approval.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
I mean, this board has reviewed, approved, denied numerous applications in town, hundreds, thousands probably. They're very keen on the items that they request, and from what I've heard tonight, these items, the landscaping that was asked for, even though it was previously approved, just to show it. Certainly my concern, I'll stick with my concerns, is the traffic. You've agreed to provide an updated traffic report. My position is that this board should have an opportunity to review that report as well. and the circulation plan and the confusion centering around the flex drivers and the number of trips, I think it's fair for the board to entertain preliminary and have you come back with this information prior to coming back for final. Just my opinion.
And if I may, I think a couple of other points also, as Mr. Razmovich, the internal building layout, the signage that they've changed on us, I mean, just recently that they testified to. I think we would like to see all that, because right now even the number of variances for signage is not clear.
You have anything?
Can it be clarified also? Joe, I guess, they only do preliminary? That's a whole new application for final after?
I believe so.
So with the motion is pending, as I understand it, it's a motion for preliminary with the bulk variances, with additional submissions before we can consider final.
Well, it sounds like the board saying we'd have to file a new application for final site plan approval. If that's the case, maybe I think it's just easier than to carry this, provide the information, and we would ask the board to not require renotice.
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay.
You would need a vote to carry. It seems like there are enough issues out there that another month might make sense as far as seeing it be resolved. So I have no objection to motion for amended preliminary major site plan, but in the alternative, if the board wishes, the board can say that they'll adjourn this for a month to give the applicant time to provide additional materials that have been references.
The only thing I would add is a month enough time for the applicant to submit these documents and enough time for, to be at the next hearing. It is a short month this month, so, or is it more like, 2 months?
Give them 2 months and then they can get back next 4 weeks on.
Yeah, we could provide it within a month.
Within a month?
Yes. Just to be clear, the meeting is 4 weeks away. And I believe, and Jerry will chime in, all the documents need to be in within 10 days of that hearing at the latest. We would have to review those documents too before the hearing, so.
I mean, as testified, our traffic engineer already testified that they already did the sensitivity analysis showing no change. So really it's just, the work's been done as he testified to. So, I don't see a delay there.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm fine with that if they're
Okay.
fine.
So is there a motion to carry this 1 month?
So I'll move that we carry this application 1 month to get the information that we're seeking clarified.
That would be March 23rd would be our next regular meeting.
Is there a second to John's motion? Okay, there's a second.
Ms. Polidoro?
Yes.
Mr. Rothman?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Ms. Brodsky?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Ms. Qureshi?
Yes.
Mr. Markel?
Yes.
Chairman Gaffrey?
Yes. Okay, so it's carried without notice.
Thank you.
It was good to see you.
Save that stuff, you can go to house.
Yeah.
That was my plan.
I will leave it here.
Actually, I may leave it for Lauren.
Sounds like a flip, yeah.
Okay, moving on the agenda, there's one memorialization, Forever Doors LLC, PB 1244-22. Is there a motion to accept the memorialization?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Polidoro?
Yes.
Mr. Rothman?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Ms. Brodsky?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Markel?
Yes.
Chairman Gaffrey?
Yes. Okay, next on the agenda is the public portion. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to be heard? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public portion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Okay, the discussion items we've already covered earlier. Is there any correspondence? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
It is 9:37. We're adjourned.